So let's now look at tiered bandwidth. Now for tiered bandwidth, it must be turned on at customer level in order to be available at the different venues. So you need to make sure that you're at customer level when you first access. Click onto the File menu, click into venues, and then you'll have the tabs along the top, and you can see the fourth tab along is tiered bandwidth. The page will load, and by default it will be disabled, but as you can see here we've got a toggle button where we can enable session time, but we also have speed limiting and data limiting. I will go through each of these. So first of all, session time. So the first thing we need to do is enable, and if this is the first time that you've enabled it, you will have to accept the terms and conditions. But once you've done that, you'll then see all the available options, and the very top option is generate vouchers. So if you want to be able to give out vouchers to your customers in order for them to have access to whatever you set within, then you can click this button. You can see you can specify the number of vouchers, how much session time you're wanting to give them, so you can see from 30 minutes all the way up to 1 year, and also a valid until date. So clicking the calendar icon will allow you to specify when these are valid until, and then obviously after that time the vouchers will then no longer be valid. Obviously take into account how much access you're giving to them once you obviously are putting the end date on. So let's say I'm going to select 31st of January and then click the generate button. Little message will pop up saying you've requested 10 vouchers, it's now been recorded. You'll send an email with the attachment containing the voucher codes. Now it can take up to 10 minutes to a few hours depending on obviously how many vouchers you have selected. And then please allow an additional hour after receiving the email in order for the actual vouchers to work. So click on close and then just wait for that email to come through to your account you're logged in as. So then below there we've then got restrict customization. So because we are at customer level, it could be that you want to set these and then not have each venue changing the relevant settings. So you can do that by keeping that toggle button switched on. But if you do turn that toggle off, then once the venue turn this on, they'll be able to change all these different settings as required. You've then got inherit settings, and turning this option on, as you can see it was defaultly turned off, all the options below then become greyed out. You get a little message telling you you're actually inheriting the price structure, and then please turn off if you do wish to make any alterations. So because we're at customer level, this is just taking the level above, which is purple. So whatever purple have set as their default, this will be applied to this particular customer, and then also your venues. Obviously you can turn this off if you do want to make slight alterations to any of the details. So we're going to turn this off and go through each of the available options. So the first one, free period. So once the user logs into the Wi-Fi, how much free period do they get before they obviously have to purchase more? And as you can see, we have from 5 minutes all the way down to 12 hours. We then have the free period reset. So essentially once they've used their 5 minutes, if they didn't want to purchase any more time, how long do they have to wait for it to reset for them to be able to access the 5 minutes again? So by default it will set to 24 hours, but you can change this from 1 up to 24. You then have free period requires a password. So if you want the users to even input a password to get their 5 minutes, then you can have this toggle button switched on. By default a password will appear in here, but you can overtype this, or you can click the generate button, which will keep changing the password. So it could be that you may want to change this every day or every week and so on. Now we have block access after free period. So again, it could be that you don't actually want to sell them time, you just want to give them an allocated set amount. So for example, they may only have 5 minutes and then that's all. So you can do this by turning this toggle button on, and this will then block any users from accessing after the 5 minutes. Again, they would have to wait 24 hours before they'd access again. So because we've put block access after free period, the options below has obviously been greyed out because obviously we're not going to charge them for any time. If we turn this option off, then this all becomes available. Now scrolling up, we've got currency. So by default it's picked up the British pound, but we have Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, the euro, Indian rupee, Mexican peso, New Zealand dollar, Russian ruble and US dollar. And more currencies will add to this in different areas as required. You've then got the different areas, so you can see you can turn on or off certain allocations depending on how you want this set up. So it could be that maybe you don't want to offer 30 minutes or 45 minutes. They must purchase at least an hour. But again, you may only want to be able to allow them to purchase up to 7 days worth. So turning these options off at customer level means that they won't appear at venue level. Now it picked up the default pricing, but you can overtype this and enter any details you would like. So if you wanted to charge slightly more in certain areas, then you can do that just by typing them in. If you do change the currency, they will automatically change each figure going off the latest currency exchange rate. So you don't need to work that out yourself, it will do it automatically. So that's all the available options on this page, but if we scroll back up to the top, we then have next. So clicking next will then take us to the area where it will display all the available venues for this particular customer. So it could be that you only want to turn it on for certain customers and not others. And as you can see there, it will then display the hardware. Now the hardware would need to have a name. So you can see this particular one does, but the others don't. So as long as you know, so if you do have more than one AP in there, giving them a name obviously helps when identifying if you want to turn it on for certain APs but not others. So you can tick the relevant APs and then scroll back up to the top and click the Save button. It'll then take you back to the main screen where we can now select the next one. So we're going to click onto the drop down again, and this time I'm going to select speed limiting. Again, it's off, so I need to enable. Here's the terms and conditions page that I mentioned to you previously. So you need to make sure you read this, click accept. Obviously, if you don't agree with it, you can reject, but obviously you wouldn't be able to use this particular tiered bandwidth feature. So I'm going to click accept, and then I'm back into the screen. So very similar, we can generate the vouchers as we could on the previous option. You've got the restrict customization and inherit settings, but this time because it is speed, we've got options to download the speed cap and upload speed cap. So that by default it's set to 100 kilobytes per second, but we can change this all the way up to 10 megabytes per second if required. And the same principle for the upload speed. We then have the currency and then the available time options. So this time I'm going to keep all options turned on, click next, and again turn it on. Now I'm only going to turn it on for the conference center. Now this particular hardware, certain hardware doesn't work with all forms of tier bandwidth. So you need to make sure that you've gone to our support site to make sure the relevant AP that you have installed does support this particular type of tier bandwidth. Now one of my APs doesn't, but this one does, so I'm going to turn it on for there and click save. Again, it's took back to the first screen, and now speed limiting is now set up. So finally, we just have data limiting. So again, I'm going to enable. I'm going to scroll down and accept the terms and conditions. And then you see you've got a little message at the top here. So for data limiting to work, you are required to create an inbound firewall to allow our radius servers to contact your controller or AP. You'll need to allow traffic to UDP port 3799 of your controller / AP private IP address. Please also ensure you have enabled any options for COA on your controller or AP. For more information, please contact support. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to contact our support department and they'll be able to explain in more detail for you. But again, we've got the generate vouchers button, restrict customization, inherit settings, and if I scroll down, because obviously this is data limiting, we can restrict the download, upload, or a combination of both. You can then specify how much free data. So again, by default, it's 100 megabytes. Clicking the drop down will allow you to choose 250, 500, or 1 gigabyte. Free data reset period. So again, from 1 hour all the way up to 24. So then we have the free data allowance requires a password. So again, turning that on, you'll be able to specify the password. You can block access after the free period. And you can see here maximum devices per session. So you can specify how many devices this is limited to. So for example, 1 all the way up to 10 devices. So that just allows them to share their data they've purchased between numerous devices if required. You've got here allow sharing between users. So again, that would mean If the user wanted to give maybe someone else who was with them with a different device access to it, then they can do that. Again, we can specify the currency, and then rather than time, we now have data. So they can purchase 1 gig, 3, all the way up to 100 gig of data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on restrict customization on data limiting to show you what it will view like when you're at venue level. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to turn it on for all 3 venues, and I'm going to tick it for each particular one. Then click save, and again I'm back to the main screen. So I've now turned it on at customer level for each particular tiered bandwidth setting. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to jump down to Ocean Hotel, click onto the tiered bandwidth option, and clicking this drop down, you can see we've got all 3 settings. So this wouldn't be available for me to turn on if I hadn't set it up at customer level. So starting with session time, I'm going to enable, and you can see we've got the generate vouchers button as we saw on the previous screen. We can inherit settings, so if you wanted just to be the same as what was set at customer, we can quite easily do that. Or then we have the option to alter these as required. So we can change the free period, the reset, specify the password, block access, etc. And as you notice, because I turned off the 30 minutes and 45, it's only displaying an hour down to 7 days. So I've limited what this venue can actually offer to their customers. But again, this venue can turn off certain ones if required. Again, they'd need to click next and turn it on for their relevant APs and click save. Next then, we've got speed limiting. So if we enable this, again you can see we can inherit settings, specify the upload and download speed, and then specify the times. Clicking next will allow me to turn it on for the relevant AP. And then finally, we have data limiting. Now because at customer level I selected restrict customization, you can see it tells me a message you are not allowed to edit this setup. So even though I've turned it on, it will be available for my venue. Cannot change any settings that were set at customer level. Obviously, if I needed that to happen, I would just need to go back in at customer level and unselect the toggle button for restricting customization. But I still get the next button to be able to apply it. As you can see, they've been applied to these APs because we were set at customer level. But once you've gone through each of these and saved, this will now be live at your venue for your available customers to access.